Okay, Deputy Jarvis, can we bring in the next potential juror?
Yes, ma'am, Your Honor, as of just a couple of minutes ago, B55, who's next, has not yet returned, but B65 is present.
Okay, we'll go ahead and take up B65.
I'm sorry, Your Honor, B55 just returned.
Okay, we'll take up B55 then.
Bring in B55. B55, Your Honor.
Please be seated. Good afternoon. We're going to refer to you as juror number B55, and the attorneys are going to have an opportunity to ask you questions about the questionnaire you filled out yesterday. Mr. De La Rianda is going to go first.
Please report. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
My name is Bernie De La Rianda, and I'm going to be asking a series of questions regarding the questionnaire, publicity specifically. You filled it out, obviously, and you made reference that, if I read this correctly, the only thing you can recall is just that the case is big and someone was a cop. Did I get that right?
Yeah, someone was caught.
And the kid was African American. Is that all you can recall?
Yeah, I don't really know much about the case.
Okay. I want to explore that a little bit by asking you some questions about that. Your reference points or your means of getting this information, is that from the local media or national news or internet or newspaper or?
Social media.
Okay. What social media specifically do you recall you would have obtained this information from?
Facebook.
And do you recall that, was that at the beginning when this happened back in February of last year, or was it recently or in between somewhere?
It wasn't recently. It's been a couple months.
Okay. And specifically Facebook, my kids do Facebook, my wife, I don't, but how do you just go on terms Facebook like news aspect of it?
Yeah, like the news feed.
Okay, and so you would have just gotten some kind of information about the case at that time?
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
I know you're shaking your head, or I'm sorry,
Yes.
nodding your head, I know that's a yes, but for birth of record, we didn't answer.
Oh, yeah.
And was that a one-time thing, or was it more than once?
More than once.
Okay. I guess when you get on Facebook, do you just kind of check the news that they're feeding in?
Yes.
Okay. And so as a result of that, whenever you would have gotten on, if they had something regarding this case, you would have looked at it?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, when you looked at it, is this the best you can recall at this time what you remember about the case, or do you remember anything else?
I don't really follow, so I didn't really pay attention too much.
Okay. When you pulled up your Facebook account and your, whatever you're doing on Facebook, do you just looked at it as just a little blurb? Is it a paragraph, or do you read the whole story?
Basically, people post statuses on Facebook.
Okay.
So most of them were the same, so I used to just read the first line and I'm like, oh, this is about that. So then I used to just move on.
Okay. So am I gathering by your answer that there was commentary about the case on Facebook too, or was it just a story?
Commentary too.
Okay. And when you saw that there was commentary, you really would not look at it in great detail, or would you look at it?
Not really.
Okay. And you think it was several months ago that you started looking at this, or?
It's been more than just a couple of months, maybe like 6.
Well, let's start at the very beginning, back in February of last year. When it happened, at that time, did you see it on the news at all?
On the news, like,
TV? Okay, you don't watch TV news?
No.
Okay. Either national or local, you did not look at it at all?
No.
Okay, how about the newspaper?
No.
Okay. So, other than the Facebook, did you look at any other internet source or website at all regarding the
No.
case? Okay. So your first actual, whenever it happened, was
Yeah.
at Facebook, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And at that time, there would have been a blurb just about the case?
Yeah.
Is that correct? Do you recall at this time, other than what you've written here, anything specific about the case? You know, any more facts or individuals involved or anything like that?
That the African American was wearing a hoodie or something like that.
Okay. Anything else you can remember?
It wasn't in, I think it was like in a low-income neighborhood or something like that.
Okay. Anything else?
Nothing else.
Now, the law says, and I think you've already noted that you did not form an opinion as a result of that, I guess.
Yeah.
You did not, right? Is that
No.
correct?
That's correct.
All right, okay. Now, assume you're picked as a juror. You're sitting in one of the chairs back there, in that little box there,
Yes.
and you're listening to the evidence.
Okay.
And you hear, you know, witnesses say whatever they say. And then you're thinking, okay, well, hold on. Wasn't there something in Facebook about that? And it contradicts what the witness says. You understand in the law, you've got to rely on what the witness says and not what they put out on Facebook. You understand that?
Yes.
My question is, can you set aside whatever was in Facebook and rely on what actually happens in this courtroom in terms of the evidence you hear in this courtroom?
That's why I never said an opinion, yes.
Okay, so you have not formed an opinion, and you understand that in the law, you've got to keep an open mind and keep an open mind as to both sides.
Yes.
Okay. When you first heard about it on Facebook, and when you looked at it, you mentioned what you said. Subsequent to that, have you anything else you read in Facebook that you can now remember? Like, okay, there was something in Facebook about
No.
the case. Nothing, no more facts at all.
I don't follow it.
Okay, and that's fine. I'm not trying to be critical of it for following or not following, just asking what you know. And I gather you understand that that's the news, and that always is not accurate. It may not be accurate.
Yes, that's why I never formed an opinion on it.
Okay. Other than Facebook, do you do any Twitter or any other of that stuff?
No.
Or MySpace or any of that stuff? Okay. After you read about it in Facebook, did you discuss it with any relatives or friends? Did you have any discussions about the case involving Mr. Zimmerman or Mr. Martin?
No.
You all never discussed it in the family or anything like that?
No.
Okay. Did anybody come up to you and start talking to you about the case?
No.
Okay. And my understanding is you're a student, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Any discussions at school about the case?
No, not like so in depth or anything like that. Just the general, like what's going on, but
Okay. Do you recall anything at this time about any discussions at school about the case?
no.
And finally, the stuff you read in Facebook, was that just news, or was there, you mentioned there was like comments, I guess, section, right? That people are making comments?
Yeah, there is a comment section on Facebook.
And if I understand you correctly, when you would pull it up, there would be commentary, but you would not look at the commentary, or you would?
No, I would not.
Okay. I guess in pulling it up, you would have seen that there was some commentary, but you just didn't read it in great
Yeah,
detail?
I didn't read it. Yeah, I didn't read it.
And the parts you did see about the news or all that, in that part, was it just straight like facts, you know, ABC, or was it people saying something about it? Forget about the commentary, I'm talking about just the news blurb that you saw.
I told you, I just used to look at the first line, I was like, okay, this is about that, I am moving on, like, that's how it was.
Okay, so you just kind of said,
Yeah.
I'm not concerned about this, it just,
Yes.
right, okay. Now, about maybe a month ago or 3 weeks ago or something, you got the summons for jury, right?
Yes.
Okay. At that time, did you start paying more attention to the cases that were going on in the community? Not just Mr. Zimmerman's case, but other cases?
No.
Okay. And obviously, you followed the judge's admonitions about not discussing it or anything from yesterday morning, correct? Since yesterday morning, since you filled this out, have you thought about that? Not that you've discussed it with anybody, but have you thought about, oh, here are some additional facts and you want to let us know? Anything you can think of?
No.
Okay. So the bottom line is you come into this courtroom with a blank slate and you're not in favor of one side or the other. You're just going to keep an open mind and rely on the evidence that comes out?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Is there any doubt in your mind about being fair to both sides? And not letting whatever you saw on Facebook, and I know you haven't seen much, impact you one way or the other?
No.
So you can be fair to both sides?
Yes.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry. I have one moment, Judge. And I'm sorry, in part of your Facebook, I gather Facebook is part where you're like, I know from my kids, you interact with other people, right?
Yes.
Okay. Did you have any discussions with any of your friends on Facebook about the case?
No.
Did any of them express to you an opinion about like the case, like he's guilty or he's innocent or anything like that?
There were statuses on that,
Okay.
based on people's opinions, but I
Right.
never physically had or
You did
any
not?
Okay. About
Okay.
it.
You never had a conversation with other people on Facebook about, you know, he's guilty or he's innocent or he did
No.
this? Okay. And whatever you saw or didn't, whatever you saw in Facebook about people's opinions, you just disregarded it automatically or?
Yeah, I didn't pay attention to it.
Okay. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Zimmerman.
Good afternoon.
Nothing.
As you can tell from this part of the questioning, we're really just trying to find out what, if anything, you know about the case that you brought to courtroom here with you today. So if anything that I say, or if during the time we're talking, you remember something that you would like to have answered to Mr. Del Rionda, let me know. Of course, what we're really trying to do is, not that it's improper for you to know about the case, just what we want to talk about so that we know what you know, okay? You're a student presently?
Yes.
Is that in the social sciences or some other
Business.
studies? Okay, so in those classes or in college, have you spoken to any of the professors about it, or have they evidenced any suggestions or ideas about it?
No.
Ever been a topic of conversation for one of your
No.
classes? You mentioned that you sort of talked to students about it, fellow students. Can you give me a little more insight on that?
I talked to fellow students about it.
I thought that you had said that you talked at school, though not in very much depth, I thought you had said.
In my psychology class, I think it was about a year ago, they had a small discussion about it, but I didn't pay attention because I didn't really care about about it.
Can you tell me what you do remember about that discussion?
The same thing that I told him.
Nothing else?
No.
Okay. It sounds like you get all of your sort of current events information from your activities on Facebook?
Yes, but I don't believe them because most of the time they are opinions.
Okay. If you were to look for hard news, something that you wanted to find out about, some current event, where would you look?
Maybe CNN,
Okay.
but I haven't really visited CNN in a long time.
Is that then CNN.com, the online version?
Yes.
Okay. Do you recall having seen or heard anything about this one, on this case, on CNN?
No.
And other places for news then from you is basically the Facebook news feed?
Just people's status updates, that's it.
Okay. And you mentioned that there were some statuses on this very issue.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that.
I can't really tell you much because I used to just look at the first line and I was like, okay, this is about that case, just move on.
Tell me why you had no interest in it.
Because it doesn't concern me.
Okay. And these statuses that people would place on Facebook that you would then be able to view and drill into if you wanted to. Tell me, were there any particular statuses that were notable to you?
No.
Anything that gave you sort of cause or pause to consider other things about this case? Anything where somebody said, I believe this, or I think this happened? Anything like that?
No, because they were based on opinions, so I didn't really feel that that was the best way to understand the whole situation.
Will you be taking class this summer?
Yes.
Full load, part-time? How are you doing that over the summer?
Actually, I finished last week. Last Friday was my final exam.
Oh, congratulations on that.
Thanks.
Are you going to be going over the summer though?
No.
All right. This case may last several weeks. I think the questionnaire said 4 to 6 weeks.
Okay.
If you were called as a juror, you would have to stay with us for the next several weeks. Would that cause any type of a hardship for you? And by hardship, we mean travel plans already in place or problems that you have caring for others, and just true hardships as opposed to just the idea of doing your civic duty and sitting with us as a juror.
I may be expected to go to Dubai and India in the last week of June, but other than that, nothing else.
Okay, tell me a bit more about that.
What do you want to know?
It sounds tentative, so is it a vacation? Is it a family occurrence?
Yes, it's a family vacation.
Okay. You know, that's, I guess, 2 weeks away?
Yes.
And are those plans set presently?
Right now, they're not set.
Do you anticipate going to Dubai in a couple of weeks if you're not otherwise with us?
Can you repeat your
Sure.
question?
When we look for jurors, we have to understand that people have things going on in their lives. And any 4 or 6 week trial is going to affect general living your life. But if you have set plans, if you have paid for vacation, if you have other what we call hardships, that you're the primary caregiver for children at home, for example, which doesn't sound to be your case at your age. But so I'm wondering if this vacation would fit into that category where it's something that you have to do, or would it really be a problem for you if you didn't?
This vacation will be something that I have to do if I go. Just, yeah.
Okay. Is that something that your family would be expecting you to be there?
Yes.
And would it cause a problem for you then if the family was going on vacation and you couldn't go with them?
Yes.
Okay. Does some of your family live here with you?
Well, we actually only take one vacation throughout the whole year with about 15, 20 people in my family.
Okay.
So we all look forward to spending time with each other.
And right now that is at least tentatively planned for the end of June.
Yes.
And it's the type of vacation, the way you just explained it, that if it happens and you go, you're expected to be there.
Yes.
You've mentioned that since yesterday, since you started this process, you haven't done any type of research or looked at anything online about this case, have you?
I have not.
Okay. I'm curious whether or not the jurors that you've been sitting with, the other people on the panel, have you had any discussions with them about the fact that this is the Zimmerman case?
No.
Has anyone talked to you about length of stay or the notoriety of the case or the publicity, anything like that?
No.
Is there anything that you believe would be of import to talk to us about what you know about this case, anything that we haven't talked to you about here today?
No.
If in fact, and Mr. Delariano may have mentioned this, if something does come to mind and your memory of that conflicts with what you hear in the witness stand, if you hear it in trial, which would you defer to?
What I hear in trial, because that's the true thing.
And the judge will instruct you that you just have to listen to the evidence, the witnesses, and leave whatever you bring, whatever knowledge of the case you bring, leave that outside. Would you be able to do that?
Yes.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. Just wait one moment, and when the attorneys are ready, please approach.
B 65 is present, Your Honor.
Please be seated. Good afternoon, ma'am. You are now going to be referred to by just your juror number as B65, okay? And the attorneys are going to ask you questions about the jury questionnaire that you filled out yesterday. All right, and we're going to start with Mr. De La Ronda. Yes.
Good afternoon, ma'am. As Judge Nelson indicated, I'm going to refer to you as B65. I'm Bernie De La Ronda, and I'm going to be asking you a series of questions based on the questionnaire you filled out. Remember you did that yesterday morning?
Yeah.
Okay. The question is I'm going to be asking you about is just the publicity, what you heard about the case, or what, that kind of stuff. Okay, so let's start at number one is, in terms of your knowledge of the case, what you heard about it, was any of that from local news?
No, sir.
Nothing on TV or newspaper or anything like that?
No.
Okay. How about national news? You know, like Fox or CNN or anything like that?
No.
How about the internet, Facebook or just your own research, Google or whatever?
No, sir.
Okay. And so you indicated in your questionnaire that you would have heard about it from church.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct?
Yes.
And is that from a fellow parishioner or from somebody else there at church?
Both, like someone else and my pastor.
Okay, the pastor too? Is that correct?
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
And at this time, do you recall what specifically you heard about the case?
Not much. He was praying for both parties.
Okay. And that would be at the church you attend here locally in Seminole County?
That's correct.
Okay. And so the prayers were for both families, that is the victims, I'm sorry, Mr. Trayvon Martin's family or George Zimmerman's family too, both sides? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Anything else other than prayers to the Lord in terms of, for both sides?
No.
Okay. Have you done any research on your own in terms of the case? Since you live in the community, have you done any research, you know, trying to find out on the internet, like what the case is about or facts or that kind of stuff?
Have not.
Okay, at all?
At all.
Have you talked to any family members about the case?
No, I don't know much about this case.
Okay. And have you talked to any friends about the case other than at church?
No, sir.
Okay. At this time, do you recall any facts about the case in terms of involving, do you know the names of the individuals? In other words, you know, have you heard the name George Zimmerman before?
Yesterday.
Okay, I'm sorry, yesterday? Oh, okay. Now, you've lived here for how long in the community? Don't tell me where you live, your address, but how long have you lived here in the community?
16 years.
Okay.
Been looking at it.
So you're not one of those people that keeps up with what's in the news?
I don't.
Is that on purpose or?
Just try not to. I don't have cable. I don't have internet. I live my life simple.
Okay. And the only thing that you've notated here is that someone was shot and a lot of people from all over came to Sanford.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
And I know you're saying yes because I can see you're nodding your head, but for the record,
Yes.
you just say yes. I apologize.
Okay.
And in terms of when you put on here, a lot of people came to Sanford, is that other than people having a right to First Amendment to come to and speak their mind?
That's correct.
Okay. Did you form any opinions as a result of that, one way or the other?
No, I didn't.
Okay. And as you notated in your questionnaire, you don't have cable, so you don't really know much about the case.
Correct.
Is that correct? Now, you filled this out on Monday. Today is Tuesday. It's Tuesday afternoon. Have you thought about it some more, saying, well, maybe I do remember something else about the case, and, you know, I need to let everybody know? In other words, did you go, and I know you followed the judge's admonitions about not talking to anybody, but I'm saying just internally yourself, did you think about it and go, let me make sure I'm not forgetting something? Did you do any of that thought process?
Tried to remember some stuff. I just couldn't remember.
Okay.
Don't remember much.
Right. As best you can, now, if you can, that thought process that you used to try to remember stuff, what did you come up with? What facts, or if anything, do you remember about the case?
Not much other than what I said already.
Okay, and just that someone was shot,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of people came from all over?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Did you watch any or hear about what was going on in court in terms of the proceedings? Because this happened back in February of last year. Have you paid attention to any of that stuff?
I have not.
Okay. Are you involved in going on the internet at all, like on Facebook and other kind of stuff like that?
No.
Okay, I guess my question is, have you come across, even without focusing or reading, anything regarding commentary on Twitter, or Facebook, or all these other sites?
About this case?
Yes, ma'am.
Mm-mm.
Okay. And I know sometimes you don't intentionally do it, but just in going on the internet, you may have come across it, is my question. Did you do any of that stuff?
No.
And you understand under the law, you have to make your decision not on what the limited knowledge you have, but what actually happens in the courtroom. Can you do that?
Yes.
Follow the judge's instructions on the law and then rely on the facts that actually come out of this courtroom?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, you're sitting to the attorneys in the court, meaning today, I said I didn't really remember, but now that I think about it, I do remember something different. You know, just glancing at the news or something. Do you understand that whatever, if you do remember something different, what's important is what happens in this courtroom as opposed to what happens outside the courtroom?
Mm-hmm.
Can you agree with that?
Yes.
Do you think the media always gets things right in terms of the facts of what happens?
Not always.
So, as you sit here today, is there any doubt in your mind as to being fair to both sides and making your decision not on what the news covered or didn't cover, but what actually happens in this courtroom? Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. West.
Yes, ma'am.
If you care for water, we have some available for you. Thank you. My name is Don West. I'm one of the attorneys for Mr. Zimmerman, who is seated over here to my left. Have you ever seen him or his picture before yesterday?
No, someone had to show him to me yesterday as well.
So until yesterday in the jury assembly room, you had never seen his picture anywhere?
Mm.
I'm sorry, you have to speak out.
No. Mm.
Okay. How about Trayvon Martin? You know who I'm speaking of?
Yes, I've seen him on T-shirts at church. Somebody was wearing it.
And can you describe the picture that you saw on the T-shirt?
Someone with maybe a hood on. That's all I can remember. T-shirt with a hood on and the name.
I'm sorry, the person at church was wearing a T-shirt, and the T-shirt had a picture of Trayvon Martin wearing a hood?
Well, with the name on it.
And what was it that the T-shirt said?
Not much, just the name. I'm assuming it was the name.
That's what I'm asking. What name was on the T-shirt?
Could have been Trayvon Martin. I barely remember because I remember Martin, that's all I remember.
Uh-huh. Would the shirt that you saw that caught your attention have had anything else on it? Any other? When do you think that was, that you saw Trayvon Martin's picture on a shirt?
Oh gosh. Had to be recently.
Well,
Can't remember what month.
Sure. About, was it this year, in 2013?
Yes.
We're in June, of course, the year's about half over, if you can believe that so quickly. When do you think it may have been that you saw this shirt with Mr. Martin's image?
Well, I could pick a month, May. I'm not certain.
Okay. May would be last month.
Yes.
Even if it wasn't exactly last month, in May, was it within the last couple of months for sure?
I would say May. It wasn't long.
Just, you're pretty sure then it was in the last month?
Yeah.
And that was the first time you had ever seen Trayvon Martin's picture?
Yeah. If that was him, I just seen Martin.
As you sit here today, you're not quite sure even if the picture on the shirt was actually of Trayvon Martin?
Right, I didn't see the first name.
Was it anyone that you recognized? Ma'am, I'm sorry to interrupt, but because of the way we keep track on the record, answers need to be
Okay.
out
No,
loud.
sir. Mhm.
Thank you. I lost track of my own thought. So you're not quite sure that the picture on the T-shirt was actually that of the person known as Trayvon Martin?
Yeah, I don't know him.
Do you know what Trayvon Martin looks like for sure?
I don't. Mhm.
Do you know how old Trayvon Martin is?
I don't.
Do you know what his relationship is to this case?
That he was the only thing I heard in church. He was the one that got shot.
Okay, so that's clear in your mind?
Yes.
That the person that was shot and killed is Trayvon Martin.
That's correct.
Do you know who shot and killed him?
What I heard,
Hmm?
yes.
Who is that?
They said Zimmerman.
And do you believe that's the same person as here?
Well, if that's his name, just going by the name.
Let me back up a little bit to the first time, from the time this happened, and I don't think there's any dispute that the incident occurred on February 26, 2012. From that point, can you tell me when it was that you first learned about this case in church?
I would say, I'm not sure, March. I'm not sure what month.
When you say March, do you mean March of 2012?
This year.
I see. Okay. So it was in March of 2013 that you first learned of the George Zimmerman, Trayvon Martin shooting?
Yes.
Okay. And was this at the church that you regularly attend?
Yes.
And do you know the pastor there? Correct?
Yes.
And you know some or many of the parishioners?
The members?
Yes.
Yes.
How long have you attended this church?
Almost a year.
Can you tell me when you first joined the church?
Last year, maybe around November
Did I understand you to say that you've lived in the Seminole County area for 15 years?
Mhm.
So have you lived here continuously since then?
Yes,
Did you live in Seminole County on February 26, 2012?
yes.
What's the name of the church?
The name of my church that I attend now,
The name of the church you attended when you first learned about this?
Greater New Mount Zion. 12.
How about the 16?
I have not.
Do you know if anyone else has?
Not sure.
Does your 16-year-old son or your 12-year-old child go to church with you?
They do.
Have you attended any? Have you attended any church services where someone spoke publicly about the case?
No, sir, I have not.
Have you ever met or been present when any of the Martin family may have spoken about the case?
No, sir.
Or how about lawyers for the family?
Don't know any. Don't know any.
When you watch TV, what stations do you watch?
You mean in the past? So right now, I don't watch TV. I don't have cable. I don't have internet. So you're referring to years back?
Well, no, I'm sorry. That's unfair. I agree with you. That's not a fair question. When's the last time you had television available to you at home?
2011, 2012.
When in 2012, do you think?
Maybe. Oh, I'm not sure. I want to say 2011 at the end of the year.
Do you think by February of 2012, you didn't have access to TV?
I didn't.
Did you have any access to television or the internet at work?
I have internet at work.
Do you ever go online to see what's in the headlines?
No, I do my work online.
You've never seen any headlines about this case or any discussion about the case?
I can't recall that I did.
How about when you got your jury summons to come here for this process?
Right. I had no idea what it was about.
Did you happen to mention that you had a summons at church?
No, I didn't mention it. I had to tell my job, though, my boss.
And did your boss make any comment about, hey, that's when they're going to pick the jury in the Zimmerman case?
No, that didn't happen.
No conversation whatsoever?
Mm-mm.
And you never mentioned to anyone at the church that you had received a jury summons?
I didn't.
Did anyone else that you know of tell? Did you mention to anyone that you had a jury summons?
My job.
No one other than your job?
Correct.
In the questionnaire, ma'am, you indicate that you had heard that people came from all over to Sanford. When did you hear that?
I was on vacation when it happened, but I heard that also in church the same time, doing the prayer and everything that the pastor were doing. I took a vacation around in the end of March.
Of 2013?
Yes.
So prior to March of 2013, you were unaware that people
What had happened. Mm-hmm.
that people had traveled to Sanford for a
That's
rally?
correct.
And then once you learned that that had happened, what were you told about that?
Other than what I just said, I don't know too much about this case. So, other than a prayer and the little statement that I did make, that's all I know.
Well, what I'm asking more specifically is, when you were told in the conversation with Reverend Blue about this case or this event, what was told to you about why people came to Florida?
Well, people came from all over to support or for a rally or something like that.
And what was the purpose of the rally?
For, I guess this case, for the rally of the Martin family, everybody came from all over, is what I understood it to be.
But you were completely unaware of that at the time that it actually happened?
Oh yeah, I wasn't here.
Well, but you were still living here?
Yes.
You just were on vacation?
Correct.
Okay. When you drive to work, do you listen to the radio?
I drive to work, I listen to my CDs. Yeah, I listen to music.
Do you listen to the radio?
Yeah, every now and then.
What stations?
94.5.
And do you listen both ways on your commute?
I mostly listen to music, my CDs.
Right, but when you listen to the radio, you listen to 94.5?
Yes.
And have you ever heard anything about this case on that station?
94.5? Not yet. I don't listen to it enough. When I listen to it, it's music, or it's gospel music.
Do you listen to it on the way into work?
Sometimes, most of the time, I listen to my CDs.
Right. What time do you drive into work?
Different times. Sometimes I do 6, sometimes 5 a.m., sometimes 7. So it depends on my schedule.
And then sometimes you listen to the radio and sometimes you just listen to...
Yeah, most of the times I listen to my gospel CDs. So.
Are you saying, though, that until March of this year, from February of 2012 until March of this year, 2013, that no time on the radio was the death of Trayvon Martin or the arrest of George Zimmerman mentioned?
I'm sure they talked about it, but probably not the times I was listening.
Okay. Would it be fair to say, I guess from what you said, that you don't know any of the actual facts?
I don't.
Do you have any idea
Sorry.
what's supposed to have happened?
Don't know anything.
Do you know anything about, so you don't know anything, any facts of the case or how this thing unfolded or what's been talked about in the news?
That's correct, sir.
Have you ever heard any of the recordings that were made in the case?
What recordings? I have no idea.
Oh, okay. That's an unfair question too, isn't it? It assumes that, okay, so you haven't heard any recordings that might be considered as evidence in the case?
No, sir.
All right, ma'am. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Bill, please remain seated, and counsel, when you're ready, please approach the bench. very much. We'll be with you again. Okay, and if we'll bring in our next witness. Witness, I'm sorry. You had said witness, I said witness, next potential juror. Were you looking at your watch because you wanted a recess, or you were just looking at your watch?
Looking at my watch and realizing it's probably not time for a recess yet, is it?
Do you want to wait till after this potential juror? Okay.
B86,
Please be seated. Good afternoon. You're going to be referred to as B86 instead of your name, and at this time we're having the attorneys ask questions about the questionnaire that you had filled out yesterday. With that, Mr. De La Ronda, you may proceed.
Please, the court. Good afternoon, ma'am. My name is Bernie De La Ronda. I'm going to be asking you a series of questions just limited to the publicity aspect of it that you mentioned. You mentioned that you obtained some information, as you noted in your questionnaire here that you wrote, and you said from TV, newspaper, and conversations at work.
Yes, sir.
Is that the gist of where you got your information?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let's talk first about that first part. TV, was it local and national, or local or national, or? do you
Channel
recall?
13.
I'm sorry.
Channel 13.
Channel 13, local channel, okay. And do you recall when you gathered that information, was that at the early stages, meaning back when it happened back in February of last year? Was it recently, or did you kind of follow along as every time it appeared?
It's kind of hard not to follow. It's everywhere. I didn't focus on it, but it's hard not to hear about it.
Right, so you would have heard about it at the beginning?
Yes, sir.
Is that correct?
Yes.
And then any time it appeared on TV, you would have, just by routine,
Yes.
watching the news, you would have heard it?
Yes, and my children talked about it since they're about
Okay.
their age.
All right. And then you mentioned the newspaper, would that be the local paper?
Yes,
And that would be the Orlando Sentinel, or?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And was that the actual hard copy of the newspaper or the online edition?
the delivery.
Okay, comes to your, okay. And then, any national news at all, like Fox or CNN, none of that stuff?
No, sir.
Okay. Then you mentioned conversations at work, and we obviously, you put where you work, and that's a school here, and not specifically about maybe the school,
Right.
but just a school here. And was that with fellow teachers there at school, or?
Well, I'm in the front office. I'm not a teacher.
Okay, but
And
I'm
that's,
saying, did you interact with the principal or the teachers, or how, what conversations? Or other people that are employed there in the front office?
Both.
Okay. Let's talk then about the latter first. In terms of at work, what, if any, comments did you hear at work about the case in terms of facts or opinions, that kind of stuff?
Okay, let me focus a second.
Whatever you remember, you know, we don't expect you to walk in here and
Most
have
of it's just
everything-
been recently talking about how the media blows things out of proportion.
I'm sorry.
Most of it was recently talking about how the media blows things out of proportion.
Okay. And were there different people stating that the media blows things out of proportion?
Yes,
Okay. Did you agree with those comments?
yes.
Okay. And aside from hearing it there at work, where the fellow employees talked about the media blowing things out of proportion?
They always do.
I'm sorry, what?
They always do.
They always do, okay.
They sensationalize a lot of stuff. I
Okay.
don't pay attention to a lot
All
of it.
right. So I gather, you're shaking your head like there's no dispute. Correct.
None.
Did you have that opinion about the media prior to this case?
Oh, yes. Many years.
Any news?
Many years, yes.
I'm sorry, for many years?
For many years, yes.
Now, you mentioned and I don't know if you did, I apologize, I know you don't have it in your, notated here in your questionnaire, but did you have discussions with your family members about the case?
Just my sons.
Okay. And you have, I'm assuming, at least 2 sons, right?
I have 2 sons, 20 and
Okay.
21.
How old are they?
My youngest is 20, and I have a 21-year-old.
And you don't have to name it, just, okay. You have a son that's how old?
20,
And then your other one is?
21.
Okay. And did you have discussions with both of them?
The older one mostly. The younger one's pretty quiet.
The one that was in college, you had
Yes.
discussions with? And if best you can recall, what did you all talk about in terms of the facts of the case?
They made fun of the fact of the Skittles.
They made fun of the Skittles, or your sons did?
Yes.
And did you agree with them, or you just kind of took
I
it all in?
just for them.
Okay, and when you say they made fun, and I apologize for putting you on the spot, but when you say they made fun, like it was Skittles, or the young man was shot because of Skittles, or
He
just it
got
was
Skittles.
candy, was it just kind of?
It was just-
You can't believe it's candy, that kind of stuff?
Something like that. I don't really
Okay.
remember.
Anything else you can remember about the Skittles, or your discussions with your son or sons about it?
Not really.
Okay. Now, I've got here on your notated in terms of facts that you've got here, George Zimmerman followed Trayvon Martin in his neighborhood after the fight. Is that what best you can recall? And I know Monday morning when you wrote this, as best you can recall what the facts were?
That's pretty much what's been in the paper lately.
What's been in the paper lately?
Yes. And
Okay, all right. Let me, if I could, as best you can, try to remember, if you can, when you first heard about it. What did you first hear about it, if you can remember at this time when you first heard about the case?
when I first heard about it?
Yeah, not when, and I'm assuming it's close in time to February of last year.
Yes.
What you first recall hearing about the case? And if you can't remember, that's perfectly all right. I'm not trying to get you to think of something that, I don't want you to speculate.
I
Yes.
just remember them talking about as somebody that had gone to the store. I don't really remember much, no.
Okay. And since February of last year till now, recently, have you kept up with, I know you watch the news, Channel 13, but have you kept up with the proceedings that have occurred in court?
Not with research, but I paid more attention
Okay.
to the news or the
So-
paper.
And I believe the summons would have gone out like 3 or 4 weeks ago, or was it more recent?
Approximately.
Okay. Did you then start paying attention to what was going on in court?
I didn't, just what was on Channel 13 or in the paper. I
Okay.
didn't sit and watch
Sure.
the TV.
I gather when you got that summons, you didn't know it was going to be for this particular case?
Not till I heard it on the news.
Okay,
And I was
so
like,
you
oh.
were one of potential, however many there were, right?
Right.
Okay. And you started paying attention. Now, what do you recall after you got the summons occurring in court? If you can, remember what you heard.
In court, I didn't pay attention to that.
At all?
Only what was on Channel 13 that they, just the highlights.
Okay. At this time, do you remember any of those highlights at all?
I just remember them showing the pictures of George Zimmerman, what he looked like, that they didn't show for months later.
Okay, and what did that picture look like, as best you can recall?
It looked like he had a broken nose and
Okay.
swollen, and they showed the back of his head bleeding. And
Okay. And what was did you have impressions when you saw that?
impressions.
Yeah, did you have an opinion as a result of seeing that?
I'm sure something severe happened.
Okay. And did you come to any conclusions as a result of that? And the reason I ask because you stated in terms of you have not formed an opinion as to the guilt or innocence of this defendant. Is that
Right.
correct? Did that watching or seeing that photograph sway you one way or the other regarding that?
I work in a middle school. I understand.
And please don't tell us the school it is,
No,
unless
I
you want
won't.
to.
Discipline. Part of my job is making sure all the information in a computer is accurate. So obviously it takes two to get to where that situation was. For me to figure out, I had no opinion either way, but obviously something traumatic happened on both sides.
Okay, so you keep an open mind as to what actually happened. Is that correct? And so is it your belief now that you can keep an open mind in terms of relying on the evidence that actually comes out of this courtroom and making your decision?
I would think so.
Okay, are you leaning one way or the other at this time, or you have not formed an opinion at all?
Lots of opinions, but not one way or the other.
I'm sorry.
Lots of opinions, but not one way or the other.
Well, tell me a little bit about those opinions that you had when you said you have lots of opinions. Everybody has opinions, obviously. And the question is, can you set this aside? And you said you have, but I'm curious right now as to what opinions you have formed as a result of what you saw on TV. And let me prod you if I could, just to get to the point, because you stated that you saw the picture of Mr. Zimmerman, correct? Did you ever see any pictures of Trayvon Martin?
From that time or just recently?
Recently.
Just recently, yes.
You did, okay. And you also, did you see any other pictures about the case at all, other than that?
Nothing I can think of right now.
Okay. Did you, I apologize if I asked this already, you did not do your own research on the case,
No.
correct? You didn't go on the internet and try to get more information or just, Google whatever about the case. Did you listen to any of the commentary, even if it was local, Channel 13, where attorneys may have spoken about the case and made commentaries about the case?
The only thing recently was when they were talking about, it kept coming on and on, about the 911 call, the screaming in the background.
Okay, tell me if you can, what you recall hearing about that or seeing on TV about that.
Just that they were trying to decide if it was Trayvon Martin or not, and if they could distinguish who it was.
Okay. And I gather that that's as far as you got on that topic, is that correct?
I just thought because they did play it, and I just thought you couldn't tell.
Your opinion based on what you heard, okay, is that correct? Now, assuming you were to hear evidence about that or not hear evidence, I guess my question is, can you agree to rely on the evidence you actually hear in the courtroom if there is evidence about that? In other words, have you prejudged whether you can hear that or not, or whether that's relevant or not in terms of the recording as to who uttered something? Have you prejudged that, or can you keep an open mind as to what actually evidence is presented in the courtroom about that?
I could probably keep an open mind.
And you mentioned that you had seen photos. Is that the one you're talking about in your notation here? Is that correct? Okay. I gather, based on your commentary here, your notations here, that you had heard at some point the 911 tape. Is that correct? Where Mr. Zimmerman's calling the police. Is that what you're basing that on?
Well, I think I heard that one, but that was the one that the woman had.
Okay.
She was calling, or she called 911.
I got you. So you heard both of them. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Is there any doubt in your mind, as you sit here today, about whether your perceptions or consideration of, in terms of being fair, in terms of relying on what actually happens in this courtroom versus the media aspect of it? Let me rephrase that and make it
Thank you.
simple. In other words, you've heard about the media,
Yes.
you've heard publicity about this case, and I gather you're of the opinion that the media does not always get it right?
Correct.
Is that correct, or am I putting words in your mouth?
No, you're correct.
Okay, so I gather you're going to set that aside, or can you set that aside? Whatever you've seen on TV,
Yes, sir, I can say that.
you can. Is there any doubt about that? Do you have any dispute about that? Is that correct?
No,
Okay. May I have a moment?
Yes, you may.
And I apologize, I may have cut you off when you were talking about the opinions that you may have had some. Did I understand that correctly?
I was hoping you'd forget that, but you
I'm
didn't.
sorry, what?
I was hoping you'd forget that.
Okay, well, I've got a good man over here that reminded me, Mr. Guy. What do you recall in terms of your opinions? I guess, let's make sure we understand where you're coming from there. Is that based on what you heard on the news, right? Or
The opinion of was basically regarding what I heard about Trayvon being up here because he was expelled from school.
okay, all right. And did that make a bigger impression on you because you're also in school?
Probably.
Okay. Now, did you take that, what you saw in the news, did you take that as hardcore evidence? Oh, that is evidence and it's really true?
No, I took that as to be from a parent point of view.
Okay. So tell me what opinions you formulated as a result of hearing that.
That being a single parent with two boys of my own, I'm very strict with them. I don't want to judge, but I just want to say that this could have been prevented had he not been up here. That's all.
So your opinion was that perhaps if, assuming that's true that he got suspended, that this would have been prevented if he had not been here?
Right.
And not that you're passing judgment, but then did you feel, as you mentioned, you're a single parent, that if the parent had done something more as a result of that,
From what I
that
see in
young man would
school,
still be
kids
alive?
and parents and
Okay. And is that based on just being a parent yourself and then also being
in the
involved in
situation I'm
school?
in, both.
Okay. Any other opinions that you formulated as a result of that, or any other topics? Now, that opinion you came to, which is, we all live in this great country, we're able to formulate the opinions. Did you have any further discussions about that with your sons?
Actually, no.
You did not. In other words, you didn't tell your kids, now, listen, this is what happens if you...
No, I've done that years ago. I don't do
Okay,
that much anymore
all
of
right.
that.
Do you think, since you formed that opinion, if you were to hear, assuming if she testified, Mr. Martin's mother, do you think that would sway you one way or the other? Would you automatically, when you heard her testimony, would you automatically, in the back of your mind, would that opinion pop into your mind and go, hold on, and would that impact you being able to be objective in evaluating whatever testimony, if she did testify, if she presented?
I would think so.
You think you could? Your first impression wouldn't automatically kick in and say, hold on,
I wouldn't say it wouldn't pop in my head, but
do you think you can set that aside? And you know, only you would know. And what we're trying to do here is be fair to both sides. And what we're asking, I guess, what I'm asking you specifically is if you were to hear from Trayvon Martin's mother, would you automatically, first said your impression when you first heard about it, would that pop in?
I would think it would pop in, but I don't.
Okay, and so let's assume it would pop into your mind. Do you think you can interfere, first of all, being able to hear, because sometimes people for opinion, they just tune the person out. They just kind of look the other way and just completely disregard what the witness says. That's number one. And number two is, even if you heard the person, you would still be thinking about your first impressions about that. Do you understand my question?
I'd like to think I could separate it.
You think you could? So the first thing is you think you could keep an open mind and listen to what that witness said? In other words, Trayvon Martin's mother said? Is that correct?
Yes.
And the second thing is, obviously it pops in your mind, do you think you could automatically throw that out and base your decision only in evaluating her testimony on what she actually said on the witness stand, as opposed to those first impressions you got, you know, that first opinion you came to? And only you know.
Right.
I mean, I don't know. And so the question is, in being fair to both sides, that is the defendant and the state, you think you can do that? And you know, this is the time to tell us. That's why we're asking you this.
I'm thinking I could.
Okay. So there's no dispute in your mind that you could just completely disregard your first impression. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And if you heard no evidence about, assuming there's a suspension, you can completely disregard that, like you had never heard about it? Or would that be harder for you to do? I gather by the way you're looking at me, that might be harder for you to get out of your mind?
That might be hard to get out of my mind.
Okay. And would it be fair to say that in some way you're not going to be able to get that out of your mind in terms of the case?
If it was to be presented as to,
Right. In other words, let's assume you sat there as a juror, you're picked and you're juror number 28 or whatever, you know, juror number 2, and you heard the evidence And there wasn't a single piece of evidence about Trayvon Martin being suspended. But you know in the back of your mind, you know it's there, you've heard it, you came to an opinion as a result of that. You think you could take that out?
I think so.
Okay, you hesitated a little bit earlier, and I'm not trying to pick on you, but am I correct in saying that you hesitated earlier? Now, and obviously you got a minute to think about it while I was formulating my next question. Why did you hesitate at first, and why are you positive now, or are you sure that you can set it aside?
Because I'm thinking.
And I'm putting you on the spot, but I'm sorry, that's why we get to ask you questions, and Mr. O'Mara or Mr. West on behalf of the defense will be able to ask you questions.
I'm just trying to do the best I can as far as.
We know you are.
And just try and go by whatever is said.
And do you read it every day?
Scan.
Okay. I know, because I also read it, that they have had ongoing coverage of this case, actually for the past 16 months. Is there anything from your reading the Orlando Sentinel that if I asked you, tell me one thing you remember reading about, what would it be about this case?
Being sequestered.
Okay. So some self-interest shows up, huh? That's okay. Let's talk about that for a minute. You've read on the questionnaire that this trial could last 4 to 6 weeks, correct? Could be less, could be more, but that's our estimate as best we can tell. And there's also a possibility that you would be here not only for that period of time, but also that you could be sequestered. Decision we haven't made yet, but it could happen. Would that fact of having to do that in order to serve us as a juror, would that create such a hardship that you wouldn't be able to serve?
Not so much a hardship as that I only have my son for a couple of months, then he goes back to New York in August.
Any chance he's in the jury pool?
I don't think so.
Okay. All right, so that's certainly a concern, right? Do you think that that is something that you will just, if we were to say, we understand your son's in town from college, but we really need you on the jury, and we pick you, let's just say we do it anyway, are you going to be so distracted because your son's at home and you're not spending time with him, such that you would not be a competent juror for us? Or would you be able to put that aside and still pay attention, focus, and be a good juror?
I think I can.
Okay? You know what happens when you say think I can instead of yes or no. So let's spend a couple of minutes, because if you can't, that's okay too. It's, you know, your son's in town and he's
But
not
that's one of
here.
those questions that's hard to answer until you've been in it.
Sure. Okay. If you were sitting though as a juror, would you be able to pay full attention? So let's just say we start right now and your son just came home yesterday. Are you going to be so distracted so that it shouldn't serve? Or can you pay attention and give us that attention for the duration of the trial?
If it was sequestered, I would think I could. But
Could
if it's
not?
not, I think I could.
Okay.
Judge, I have a moment, please. Ready, Your Honor.
Great, thank you very much. I almost feel like I should have a few more questions to make the tape change worthwhile, but I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you. If you'll remain seated for just one moment, counsel, when you're ready, please come up, approach the bench. talk with you again soon, and if you'll please follow Corporal Demps outside the courtroom, but if you could bring in our next, oh, you wanted to take a recess? Okay, let's take a 10-minute recess. It's, okay, good time for the recess. Court will be in recess for 10 minutes.